Today is a terribly sad day here in Allegheny County as all of us mourn the loss of two steelworkers here from the explosion that occurred yesterday at batteries 13 and 14. Our thoughts and prayers and hearts are with the employees here at U.S. Steel, with the members of USW, their family and friends, in the entire community of Clarendon and communities throughout the Mon Valley. I'm here to provide an update of the role that Allegheny County played in being on site here yesterday and today. But before I get into that, I want to offer some gratitude with the folks who were involved in emergency response yesterday. We had dozens of local agencies respond, and we are so grateful to the work that the first responders did to do their best to remove people from the site and get them the medical care that they needed. We are also joined today by a number of elected officials from all levels of government, Congresswoman Lee, Senator Piscitano, Rep. Gogenauer, Rep. Ingalls, Clarendon Mayor Lattanzi, and Pima Director Padfield. It was an incredible lift from our county departments yesterday under the direction of Chief Brown with Emergency Services and Superintendent Kearns from Allegheny County Police. They were on site to work with local responders, to coordinate response, to work with U.S. Steel and the employees to gather information to determine what happened yesterday. And I have assurance from U.S. Steel that they will continue to cooperate fully with our team at Allegheny County to get the information we need to do a thorough investigation. I think we all share a common goal that we want to get to the bottom of what happened, and we want to prevent it from ever happening again. So at this time, we do have an ongoing investigation that is active, and we can share some information around that. I also want to touch on the air quality and some notes from our Department of Health. So, yesterday, after the explosion, we did watch the air quality monitors at Clairton, Liberty, and North Braddock. I do have to say they all showed levels of PM 2.5 and sulfur dioxide to be within the national ambient air quality limits throughout the event yesterday and today. Further, hydrogen sulfide levels were also low and below the state's nuisance threshold level. So good signs. We are appreciative of the governor for sending in additional resources from DEP so that we can do so we could do some additional monitoring. Yesterday, we did issue, because of an abundance of caution, a stay-at-home order, and that was lifted early in the evening. We currently do have Allegheny County Health Department contractors on site doing routine inspections of the coking operations today. We did have two Allegheny County Health Department employees on site yesterday during the explosion. Both are okay and have returned home safely. Because it's an active investigation, we are going to, focus on getting the information that we need and ensure long-term compliance with the permit conditions that regulate the Clarendon Coke Works. And I just have to, again, express my gratitude to all the departments across Allegheny County, from the police to emergency services, to our health department, to our medical examiner's office. They've all done a tremendous job to bring professionalism and resources to this tragic event. And events like this are extremely difficult, and it also brings people together as a community And I have to express my gratitude to Governor Shapiro for, again, contacting me once it happened to ensure that we were given any resources we needed from the state in order to pursue our rescue mission and to complete this investigation. So I want to thank Governor Shapiro for being here, and I'm going to invite him up to the podium to provide some remarks.
Thank you. Let me begin where the county executive led off. I think it is important to note her appreciation for all of the different departments here in Allegheny County that responded to this tragedy here at the Clairton Coke Works. I think it is also critically important to not just thank them, the first responders that ran toward danger, but to thank your county executive who was in charge of this emergency, who handled it effectively, who brought all of the resources to bear in order to be able to address the needs of this community. The county executive and I spoke multiple times yesterday. I thought she did an extraordinary job in really difficult circumstances, and we appreciate her leadership here. I want to say just how thankful I am to each and every first responder, to each and every member of the United Steelworkers who literally every day go forward in their jobs to help build this region, build this Commonwealth, and build this country. It is dangerous work that they do. It shouldn't be as dangerous as it was yesterday. And we owe them an answer for what happened. We owe them the answers to their questions. And we owe them to never forget the sacrifices that occurred here yesterday. I have been assured in both my conversation yesterday with Dave Burritt, the CEO of U.S. Steel, who you will hear from in a moment, and again in the briefing that we just had, that U.S. Steel is committed to two things. Number one, getting to the bottom of what occurred and ensuring a safe plant for their workers when they return. And number two, making sure that the broader community is protected going forward. As the county executive noted, there was a lot of government working together yesterday and continues today. Local, state, and federal government all working together. And while we should be proud of the fact that your government officials and your first responders are doing what they need to do, we need to remember that this was a human tragedy, that we lost 2 lives here yesterday at this plant, that there are others who remain hospitalized and injured. I hope you'll join me and Lori in continuing to pray for those who are injured and for those families who lost a loved one. Part of the reason why we're a bit late here is I had spent a good deal of time this morning together with Tricia and Lucy, the sister and the girlfriend of one of our beloved steelworkers who worked in this facility for nearly 2 decades. He went by the name of TQ. TQ is a special person, a devoted father of 3, someone who I understood served as a mentor to the other steelworkers who were here. Someone that apparently you would go to on a rough day when you needed a joke or when you needed your stones busted. He was the guy who was there for others while being there as a leader in this plant. I think it's important to note that he was also a second-generation steelworker. He followed in his father's footsteps. And as his sister Tricia and his girlfriend Lucy shared with me, he was also a mama's boy who, after working long and tough shifts here at the plant, would go take care of his mom and look after his 3 children and look after Lucy's 2 children as well. He was devoted to them. He cared about them, and his life was cut too short because of what happened here at this plant. We have a responsibility to remember his legacy, to make sure that his memory lives on. And I trust that with Bernie Hall's leadership here at the Steelworkers and the commitment of Dave Burritt and the team at U.S. Steel and of course the work that's going to be done by our county executive Innamorato and others, we will honor his legacy, and we will make sure that his children know that their dad was a special man, a good man, and a man who helped build this community with his hands the way his father did. We lost another life yesterday, and that family wishes that their identity should remain private at this time, and we will respect that. But know that the prayers of all 13 million Pennsylvanians rest with this Clairton community, rest with those two individuals who lost their lives, and with those who continue with this struggle in the hospital to get physically well. I trust the county executive Innamorato will continue to lead this forward with the skill and the decency that she has. I know she will work with the mayor and the Clairton community to address any questions that they have about air quality and water quality. It bears repeating that under the leadership of Director Padfield at Pima, who joins me here today, we've provided the resources that have been requested, and there have been no troubling tests of air or water that we have seen yet, but we all want to remain vigilant, and I know the U.S. Steel joins us in wanting to remain vigilant to ensure the well-being of not just those who work at this plant, but all of the wonderful people who live in this community as well. It's going to take a team effort to rebuild here. It's going to take a team effort to lift this community back up. It's going to require the prayers of this Commonwealth, the great work of our county executive, and it's going to require a commitment from U.S. Steel to see this through. Dave Byrd has assured me and assured everyone else that that commitment would be there, and we appreciate his leadership. And with that, I'll turn the microphone over to Dave Byrd at this time.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for your compassion. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for your support. Also, County Executive, thank you very much for your leadership. Boots on the ground, it makes a difference. And also Bernie Hall and your team staying aligned to make sure we get to the solutions that everybody expects and deserves. This is an extraordinarily difficult day for the U.S. Steel family. We have suffered heartbreaking losses. First and foremost, on behalf of all of us at U.S. Steel, I want to extend my deepest condolences to the family and friends of the two employees we lost. We're holding you close in our thoughts and offer you our support. We're also thinking of the injured and their families. We are doing everything we can to support them. To our colleagues at Clairton, please know that professional counselors from our Employees Assistance Program are on site right now and are available to help in any way you need. We're working closely with local, state, and federal authorities to understand exactly what happened. We're not going to speculate. We're going to let the people do their work and support them in that important job. We will share as much as we can, as soon as we can, and we will take every step necessary to keep our people safe. Safety is, and always will be, our number one priority. Every shift, every day, every facility, always. Thank you to our first responders, our own emergency teams, and the many employees who acted with courage and compassion after the incident. The people of the Clairton plant are our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues, and frankly, they're our family. We will honor the memory of our colleagues we have lost, and we will get through this together. Thank you. Now we'll hear from Bernie Hall, USW District 10. Bernie.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bernie Hall. I'm the State Director for the United Steelworkers. First, I want to express my heartfelt condolences to the families of the two brothers who tragically passed away in yesterday's explosion. And I want to ensure those who were injured that you're in all of our thoughts and prayers today. Also, I want to say thank you to all the first responders and emergency personnel who've assisted in the rescue and recovery efforts. The work you've done has been exemplary, and you helped save lives yesterday. So thank you for all that you've done. Health and safety is at the core of the work we do as a union, and every worker deserves to go home every day. We're going to fight to ensure that the investigation into what happened is thorough and, just as importantly, transparent. The families of those who lost their lives and were injured yesterday deserve nothing less. With that, I'll turn it back over to Governor Shapiro.
With that, the county executive and I be happy to take any questions you might have.
I have a question for Mr. Burritt, please. First, I do want to extend my condolences to the U.S. Steel community and the USW as well, and the city of Clairton as well. But I do want to ask the question regarding the future of this plant and the future of safety at this plant. There are many who say that transitioning away from blast furnaces and coke making and providing a way to make steel in Pittsburgh, in the Mon Valley, there's a safer way to do it in the future. Is U.S. Steel and now Nippon Steel interested in that, in making sure that the danger of the past isn't in the future of this place?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I talked with Mori-san, the vice chair of Nippon Steel, a couple times already about the incident, and I talked with the chairman, Hashimoto-san, just today. And I'm delighted to tell you the condolences that they issue, and also that this facility and the Mon Valley are here to stay. We're investing money here, and we wouldn't have done the deal with Nippon Steel if we weren't absolutely sure that we were going to have an enduring future here in the Mon Valley. You can count on this facility to be around for a long, long time.
Mr. Burritt, if you don't know what caused this blast, is it safe to continue operating this facility right now?
We, of course, take safety first, and the first priority, of course, was to make sure everybody was accounted for and taken care of, and making sure that the gas was turned off and the whole area was secured. We're now doing the investigative type work with the great people at the local, state, and federal level. We're getting the information. There is no risk at this point in time. If there would become a risk, we would obviously shut it down immediately. We have a lot of talented people that understand how steel works, and they're going to let us know if they see anyone in harm's way. If you see something, say something. We make sure we do the right thing and do something. You can count on that. We expect our employees to have big voices so we can make the intelligent choices. And we count on them each and every day to make safety first. So the facility is safe and the facility will endure.
Governor, if you don't mind, regarding the safety issue. It is hard to parse out the jobs that are here, the safety and the security and the environmental impact here, and the economy. We had a terrible situation yesterday. As governor, are you interested in finding ways to advance the technology in a different way that maintains jobs here, but that does really secure additional safety measures so that this kind of tragedy doesn't happen again?
I believe we can do, pardon me, I believe we can do all of the above. We can make sure that the neighbors who live in the area have confidence in the air they breathe and the water they drink, that the workers who come here every day have confidence in the safety of this facility and the fact that Nippon is investing in it to make it even safer. I think many of us worked hard to ensure that there would be a future of steel making here in southwestern Pennsylvania. We all succeeded in that, but that was just the beginning of the work that needs to be done. I want to make sure that, as was the case with TQ, where he was a second-generation steel worker, that the children of those who are working in this plant feel that they have a future in steel making right here, and I'm confident that they do. I think with the added investment of more than $2 billion initially that Nippon will put into this facility, it will not only allow it to be safer and more efficient, but ensure that steelmaking will continue in this region.
Mr. Burr, are you expecting a transparent, the county executive, the governor, and Bernie have talked about a transparent investigation. You said sort of you would give all the information you could. Are you going to commit here to a transparent investigation?
Are you going to commit to a transparent
Absolutely. In fact, we've talked about that several times with the governor. We need to not speculate. We need to get the facts. Facts are friendly. And we're going to support the local investigators, the state investigators, the federal investigators. We're going to make sure that we get to the root cause. And when we get to that root cause, we can be assured that this doesn't happen again.
Mr. Burr, coke ovens were being loaded or
Hang on, we'll get to you next. Go ahead.
Mr. Burr, I had a tough conversation with a steelworker not even 2 hours ago. He was very close to this explosion. When it happened, he's both emotionally devastated, but he's also upset. He said that there are many issues that happen in this plant that nothing's even addressed until there's an injury, an incident, or the loss of production. He cited a specific instance where he said he told a manager that he feared that repairs were being rushed, and that manager told him that they needed that oven to be online to pay everyone's wages. He said that U.S. Steel's whole policy is not preventative race. He said that U.S. Steel's whole policy is not preventative maintenance, it's reaction. What's your response to him?
I'm shocked and outraged at that statement. I find it unbelievable because of safety being in our DNA. This is the first thing we talk about at our meetings. This is the first thing we cover in our board meetings. We take this extraordinarily seriously, and so I'd like to learn more about where this came from, because we want to get the facts, and if there's any issue out there where people feel at risk, I need to understand it. So we can follow up with you and perhaps get to the root cause of this, because we value the facts and we will act on the facts.
This is Oliver Morrison from MetLife. You may not know the cause of the explosion. Can you say what was happening? Were the ovens being loaded or unloaded? And what was going on with 13 and 14 when the explosion happened?
Well, I'm going to have Scott Bacaizo, who runs North American Flat Roll. Again, we're not speculating. He can talk about what was going on at that moment, and hopefully that will be satisfactory enough, because we're not going to speculate as to what happened. We got to make sure that the inspectors do their investigative work without us having supposition as to what might have happened and taint the investigation. We've got to get to the truth. Scott?
How many explosions were there yesterday?
Thanks, Dave. Question, I think, was the battery being loaded or unloaded. It was a normal course of business yesterday. So we were charging ovens, and we were pushing ovens with pushing coke out of ovens. We had individuals that were prepping for a maintenance job in the area, and that's where we are with the investigation right now. As you can imagine, we went through a lot of sorrow yesterday. Now that we have recovered everybody, and our people that are in the hospital are being well taken care of, we want to secure the area so we can get in there and get a good investigation done, and to everyone's point here, make sure that it does not happen again.
Hang on. Scott, there was an important question over here.
I'm sorry?
The number of explosions.
There was one explosion.
Can you explain that?
Yes, yeah, I can explain
Let
that.
him explain
There was
that.
one
I think that's
explosion that involved coke oven gas. The other two, I think, two explosions that were called explosions were actually relief pressure valves. When we had the issue on 1314 battery, we had some back pressure into 1920 battery. Those rupture gates is what they're called. They did their job. They released. That's why we saw a bit of a plume when those two occurred, but they did exactly what they were supposed to do from a safety standpoint.
Ryan.
We don't have the answer for everything yet, obviously. What's the scope of the day? What's being cordoned off right now according to plan now?
I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. We talked about the health and safety of the community. We're very good shape there. We have both 19 and 20 batteries offline, just as abundance of precaution in making repairs to those rupture valves. So they will remain offline until they are safe. And 13 and 14 battery is shut down until we get to the bottom of the investigation and understand what we have to do what we have to do to bring it back online in the future.
We'll take one or two more. Go ahead.
What's the return? I know you mentioned there were going to be grief counselors on site, but what is the return to work for the still workers who were inside when the blast did happen? What health precautions, what health monitoring would take place?
Well, we are checking their monitors, or personal gas monitors. Everybody that was in the area had a personal gas monitors. We have fixed monitors in all locations. So obviously we're going through all of that information as part of the investigation. And if we find anything that's a problem, we will let the authorities know. Absolutely. This is a.
Maintenance was set to happen. Was that because there was anything wrong with this specific spot there?
Yeah, routine maintenance is what they were preparing for. I think it was actually going to happen next week, but we'll get to the bottom of all of that.
And again, still no warnings that you know of ahead of this that would have indicated that anything was wrong there, anything that needed
No.
work urgently?
No, not at that time. Not at that time.
What can we do personally for the families of the injured?
Right now to reach out to them. Mr. Byrd, if you could answer that question. Is there something you can do or say to the families of the injured right now?
I can answer that. We have reached out to the families, not only that were injured, but of the two deceased. We will obviously be very upfront with them and take care of any needs that they have initially, and then we will also have long-term health insurance and those types of things that we will work through with them, and they will not be forgotten.
How long do we think this investigation will take to find the cause and make sure it doesn't happen?
I can't comment on that. As I said, right now it's an active investigation. We're working with all the state, federal, our experts that we have brought in from other areas. They're all working together to make sure that we do this properly, and we ensure that it doesn't happen again. I mean, these are brothers and sisters and fathers that unfortunately we have lost, and it's important for us as a company to make sure that it never happens again. Every one of our employees knows that at any time they can stop a job if they feel that it is unsafe, and we encourage that, and that's what we want going forward as well.
Give us a clear picture of what the injuries are right now and how those folks are recovering in the
I
hospital.
can't comment on that.
The investment from the pond still, that is what people want to know. What upgrades will be made? What will change from that investment?
Yeah. Well, that'll come out of the investigation. I'm not going to comment on that, on who was, who was not.
What emissions has there been since yesterday? Are you considering any sort of fence line monitoring?
Yeah. As you heard the county executive say, we are well below any of our health thresholds. We will continue to monitor that. We monitor it every day. So that is normal course of business.
So are you off-gassing, or how do we
No, we are not off-gassing. What?
You're not? Okay.
No.
Are you producing enough coke to fuel the blast furnaces that you have online right now at capacity?
Yes.
Paul, last question.
Yeah, actually, can you talk a little bit about how much of this plant is actually operating, percentage-wise?
Let me make something clear. We have two priorities right now. Our first priority is to the families that lost loved ones, the injured, to make sure that they are getting the best care that they have, and to continue to do this investigation to find out what happened and make sure it never happens again. I can't tell you exactly the percentage of what we have. We have contingency plans in place all the time to make sure that if something like this happens, we're able to do what we need to do. But our first priority is with the families and our members of our USW and management members that were impacted by this.
Thank you, everybody.
Back here live in the studio, Ryan Recker and Michelle Wright. For the past half hour, you have been watching an update, a news conference from Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and other leaders regarding the explosion yesterday at the Clairton Coke Works plant. We're going to run down some of the takeaways from that. Number one, it was confirmed that one explosion took place with coke oven gas. It was in the midst of what was called a normal operation as workers were prepping for a maintenance job in the area. Governor Shapiro pointed out that he spent time today with the sister and girlfriend of Timothy Quinn. He referred to him as TQ, one of the two men who died. The identity of the other victim has not been revealed per the request of the family. Governor Shapiro also says we owe answers to the victims, and he's urging U.S. Steel to get to the bottom of the situation and also guarantee that the community is protective. Then we also heard from U.S. Steel CEO Dave Burritt, who said that they are working closely with all authorities to support them. They will share as much information as they can when they can. And he urged and underscored several times that they will not speculate, obviously, during this situation.
U.S. Steel does plan to work fully with all the investigations going on, but there are a lot of questions. Again, all we know about what happened right before the explosion is that there was a routine maintenance group going around. They were planning something, perhaps to begin next week, but they saw no trouble at all, no indication. So a lot of questions remain, but they are committed to looking into it and to cooperating. We're going to be back on the air starting at 4 o'clock with more on this. Until then, you can find the latest developments on WTAE.com and our WTAE app.